Hi everyone, Phil here, and today I am here to talk to you about the Talkbox.
What the hell is a Talkbox anyway?
So generally speaking, there are two ways that musicians achieve the robot voice effect associated with people like Daft Punk: vocoders and talkboxes. And the more common of the two these days is probably a vocoder, because it's a lot easier to set up. Now, to use a vocoder, you sing your lyrics, you play your melody or your chords, and the vocoder analyzes the frequency content of your voice and uses that to modulate the frequency content of the synthesizer sound, and hey presto, you have a talking synthesizer. Now, a talkbox, on the other hand, is a very different beast. A talkbox, you play your carrier signal, your melody line, into an amplifier that relays that sound down a PVC tube that you stick in your mouth and use your mouth to physically modulate the carrier signal. And that, as you can imagine, this comes with a whole host of problems. Trying to pronounce things correctly with a tube stuck in the end of your mouth, trying not to dribble on yourself during a performance. But it produces a very distinct sound, a very different sound. Been used by a lot of artists over the years. I think Daft Punk only used a talkbox on Around the World. As far as I know, all the rest of their tracks were vocoder. Also well known for being used by guitarist Peter Frampton and Roger Troutman of Zapp, very well known. Oh, and also Bon Jovi on Living in a Prayer. When you hear the guitar making weird vowel sounds, that's a talkbox.
I don't like sand. It's constantly rotating and it gets everywhere.
Now, I've had my talkbox for about 3-4 months now, but it's only really in the last 2 or 3 weeks that I've made a real concerted effort to learn how to actually talk with the thing. So I'm going to talk about everything I wish I'd known when I started. I'm going to talk about tube technique and what you actually do with your mouth. I am going to talk about good choice of carrier signal and settings on the talkbox itself. I am going to talk about how to mic a talkbox performance. And I am going to talk about practice and setting expectations.
You put the lime in the coconut and drink them both up.
So, common misconception, you don't sing down the tube. You probably already know that if you've watched this far. I promise my advice gets more useful. So yeah, you don't sing down the tube. Sound comes out of the tube into your mouth, and you're using your mouth to shape that sound into words. So the only parts of words that you need to say are the sibilants, s, f, and to a lesser extent plosives, p, g, t, d. Everything else will be formed from the sound coming out of the tube. Now, first tip I wish I'd known when I got started: get yourself a smaller tube. You will suffer somewhat, you will lose a bit of body to the tone, a few of the low end frequencies, but nothing that I don't think you can correct with EQ afterwards. So the tube that comes with the talkbox, I've got a Banshee 2, is quite large, got a 14mm diameter, and it's quite stiff. It's very hard to talk through it. Some people say boiling it helps to soften it. One person I spoke to online said that hadn't helped them. So I've just gone online and bought 2 lengths of smaller diameter tubing. I think they're technically aquarium tubing. I've got an 11mm outer diameter, and then stuck in the end of that I've got an 8mm outer diameter, and I've just used a bit of blue tack to help stop sound leakage from the joins, and it is much easier to talk with 8mm tubing in my mouth than 14. Now, in terms of tube placement, you want it in the side of your mouth. You need to be able to close your lips around it to make certain sounds, b, p. Now, generally speaking, the further back you can get the end of the tube in your mouth, the more your mouth will be able to shape the vowel sounds and the clearer your words will be. I may have said otherwise on Twitter at some point. Ignore me, I didn't know what the hell I was talking about at the time. So you kind of want to be clasping the length of the tube between your molars. Obviously, don't bite so hard that you close the end of the tube up, and try and avoid closing off the tip of the tube with the side of your tongue. If you can get the tip of the tube to kind of sit right on top of your tongue at the back of your at the top of your throat. Generally speaking, if you can make a hard G, if you can do a G with the tube in your mouth, it's probably far enough back. So G, G. A fair bit of that tube in my mouth. Now, some people just play with the tube held directly in their mouth. I've seen other people play it taped to the side of their mic stand. I've got a gooseneck clamp that I'm currently using to hold my camera. Obviously, if you can do that, then it lessens the chance of the tube falling out of your mouth mid-performance. But it does kind of mean you can't move your head.
You got me right in your wavelength, baby.
Now, carrier signals. Rumour has it that Roger Troutman used a DX100. I don't have a DX100. I don't have his patches. There's no point asking me to send them to you. But what works well, I have found, I've got a simple sawtooth carrier wave here. And keep your eye on the spectrum up at the top, because what you're going to want to do is boost the amount of upper harmonics in the signal as much as you can. The more frequency content your carrier wave has, the more frequency content you're going to be able to reproduce in the resulting output, the clearer your words will be. So I like to play a number of tricks here to increase the amount of harmonics above just the basic carrier. First of all, I'll turn on a 1 octave down octave doubling on the oscillator there. And then I've also got, built into this particular synth, we've got a valve saturation effect to help boost some of the high end. But then in addition to that, there's a couple of things I do. So I've got a low pass filter a high pass filter at 120 Hertz and a low pass filter at 12 kilohertz. Very unscientific. I just googled very quickly and cut out frequency ranges that don't occur in the average male voice. And then again, to help with the high-end frequencies, I cannot stress enough how much you want to boost high-end frequencies. I have both a bit of high-end EQ, and I also have this. I also have a harmonic exciter that helps to further boost the high-end frequencies. You can take a quick look at the settings of that. So altogether, the end result, now that might sound very harsh, very buzzy, very, very tinny. It's not something I would want to actually record and play a melody line on, but trust me, it works well as a carrier sound for a Talkbox. Now, other things you need to consider. Unlike a vocoder, you can't expect to play chords down the tube and have the end result sound smooth and harmonized. So you're going to want, if you're using a polyphonic synthesizer, you're going to want to set it down to mono. I've got this set down to one voice here. You're also going to want very, very fast attack and release times. I think what the attack all the way down on 0 there, and release just slightly larger, just to give slightly more natural sounding volume roll off on word endings, but still a very short release. Now, if you do try and play harmonies down the tube, you do get a sort of very interesting, almost dissonant grit to the sound, which can be nice if that's what you want. I'll demonstrate that a bit later, but it's not going to be like a vocoder where you can smoothly harmonize chords.
Ground control to Major Tom, your circuit's dead. There's something wrong, can you hear me, Major Tom?
Now, other than the trick with the smaller diameter tube, the second thing I really wished I'd known when I started was how to mic up your performance. Now, if I just play a quick passage with my mic set up as it would be if I was doing just a normal studio vocal, I've got my pop shield, I've got the windshield on the mic, got a bit of distance, level on the mic turned up.
Never gonna give you up.
Not bad, but you can hear a lot of background bleed from the unmodulated carrier signal coming through in the signal. Now, the trick to getting rid of this is several-fold. Isolating noise from the actual Talkbox itself. Obviously, the box contains an amplifier and a speaker. It vibrates. It gives off its own sound. So I've corked up the area where the tube connects to the box with a bit of blue tack, same as I have around these. I also rest the box on a bit of foam on a yoga block just to isolate it from resonating with the floor. But the main thing is you're going to want to mic it up as if you're miking live vocals, not studio vocals, and I'll show you what that means. So I've taken my pop shield out of the equation, I've taken the windshield off the mic, I've reduced the level of the mic down to just below half, and I'm going to practically eat the mic when I give this next performance, and hopefully you'll hear the difference.
Never gonna give you up.
I'll just play those again quickly for you, back to back, so you can hear the difference between the two.
Never gonna give you up. Never gonna give you up.
Now, I hope you'll agree that that second one sounds much better. It took me a lot longer than I would care to admit to discover that. Even when I was actually recording vocals for an upcoming track, I went a couple of steps further. I chucked a towel over the Talkbox itself just to eliminate even more of the buzz from that. And I had my tube on my gooseneck clamp, and I actually wrapped the length of tube that was running alongside the mic in a thick winter scarf. Sounds bizarre, looked bizarre, did actually help. I got some very clean takes for the upcoming track. Another thing which I haven't done for this video, but which again helps, is again, if you go in and boost the high-end frequencies again even further in your DAW effects chain after the fact. I cannot stress enough how much boosting the sort of like 2 to 5 kilohertz range really helps with clarity.
Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down.
Now, a couple of final points. One note on the keyboard performance you're going to want to give. Don't play like a keyboard player. Play like a singer. Use a lot of grace notes, use a lot of trills, use a synth with vibrato on the mod wheel. It sounds obvious when you say it, but you're going to want to perform as if you were performing with your voice, not performing with a keyboard. And also, temper your expectations. It took me weeks to get to this point, and I am not an expert. There are many people out there who sound far better than I do. But one thing I have noticed, especially with people who don't use a smaller diameter tube, you can still, even in people's performances, you can still sometimes hear a lot of lisping on S's and other sort of flaws in their pronunciation. I spent, even after I finally discovered all the tricks I've just covered, I still spent a day recording takes for a 4.5 minute song before I got a take for every part of the vocal that I was happy with. Now, obviously, this is me being a bit of a perfectionist. You can probably get away with a lot of lisping, a lot of mouth noises in a live performance that if you're me, you're not going to be happy putting on a studio quality track. Other thing, songs to practice. Now, yes, I've used a bit of Rick Astley in there, partly trolling, but it is actually a really, really, really good practice run. The chorus from Never Gonna Give You Up has N-V-G-D-S. It has rapid runs of consonants. It's a really good melody for injecting grace notes and vibrato. I strongly recommend, if you really, really want to be able to give a full Talkbox vocal song as opposed to just one line here or there, find sentences like that, find sequences like that, and play them over and over and over again until you're happy with the end result. Well, I hope that's been helpful. I wish all this stuff came in a manual with the Talkbox. Rocktron, if you're listening, hint, hint. And that's all for now.
I can make you dance, baby.